Welcome back to Goliath. Today we have a new exciting product announcement, and I'm here with our head of engineering, Dan. Dan, what are we talking about here today?
Chris, today we're going to talk about pipelines, which is something we've been working on for a very long time, and is taking some of the existing functionality we have in the platform, namely output streams, which allows you to send data from devices to other locations via Goliath. And we're extending that and enhancing the functionality quite a bit. And so I think we're going to get into it today, but we're super excited to get this out into the hands of customers.
Yeah, I mean, today is a big deal for us, but I think even more so, like just the things it unlocks. Like I get to see a little bit of what's coming down the pipeline, uh, and the things that are coming down the pipe for us are super super exciting, and they're all enabled by the things that we're going to be seeing here today. So maybe we can take a look at what is actually kind of under the hood and how people might get started.
Absolutely. So, looking here at just the update to our docs, one of the things I want to emphasize is the different kind of conceptual components of the Goliath platform. So, we obviously have our firmware, which is kind of we view as the client side. So, that's running on your device and talks to Goliath. And then we have device management, data routing, and application services. This is kind of just a reframing of some services that have already existed. Today, we're going to specifically focus on Goliath data routing, and the mechanism by which we do data routing on Goliath is now pipelines. And like I said, that's kind of an evolution of our previous output stream model. But it starts off by just streaming data. So folks who have used Goliath before may have been familiar with sending data to LightDB Stream. LightDB Stream is a time series database that Goliath hosts and integrates really well into our platform. Now, that same data that you would be sending to LightDB Stream, you are just sending as streaming data to the Goliath platform and then directing it where you want it to go. So, where previously data was sent to LightDB Stream and it had a feature of output streams that allowed you to then forward it on elsewhere, now streaming data arrives at Goliath. You're able to filter out the data that you want, perform transformations on it, and then deliver it to any destination you like, whether it goes to LightDB Stream or not. And we can walk through some of the different components of pipelines as well, but that's kind of the high level concept.
That's great. Yeah, I think it, as a hardware person, at first this was a little bit different from how I thought about things. But then when you start to see all the things you can do with it, and like kind of the capabilities that it unlocks, like the self driven. So one thing for the fearful people like me is the defaults are ready for you to go, right? And so maybe that's where we could start. Is like, what does the default pipeline look like that matches a lot of the experience in the past?
Absolutely. So the default pipeline is going to be very simple for folks that come into Goliath and create a new project. We allow you to send multiple types of data from the Goliath firmware SDK. We've previously supported CBOR and JSON. We now support content type of octet streams. You can send arbitrary binary data through the platform. So that's one big thing that's enabled by this. But the default pipeline is going to be sending to LightDB Stream, and it's going to be accepting CBOR data. The reason why we chose that as the default for new projects is because sending CBOR data is a little more optimized than JSON. So we typically prefer to do that from the firmware SDK. And LightDB Stream works with JSON data and stores it in a time series fashion. And so that default pipeline is going to accept CBOR. It's going to use our CBOR to JSON transformer and then deliver that to LightDB Stream. So a pretty simple example, but it kind of gives you the functionality that you can then modify and build off of to do multiple different things.
Yeah, I think one of the things we always talk about CBOR is that it compresses things down and it gets your data savings that you're saying, but then it's less human readable. But at this point, now that you have pipelines in here too, it just shows up when you see it. You're going to see it as back to JSON data. So that's a real benefit, I feel like.
Absolutely. And that's just, LightDB Stream, which happens to work with JSON data. There could be other destinations that support other types of data or support arbitrary data. And that arbitrary data is really useful because it means that you can now send even more optimized payloads. So JSON and CBOR are both semi-structured data formats. JSON obviously being a textual representation, as you mentioned there, and CBOR being binary, but it's still semi-structured, right? So you have some overhead in communicating the structure of the data. If you're using structured data that has a format that's communicated, out of band, like protobuf or packed C structures or things of that nature, you're now able to send that through Goliath pipelines as well, which you can optimize even further. But then at the cloud side of things, when you're sending out to external destinations, you can make sure it's in the format that's required by that destination.
That's great. All right, can we see this in action?
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe before I switch over to the console, I want to talk about the three concepts that we have mentioned
That's
here.
a good idea. Yeah.
Um, yeah, and also maybe some of the supporting bits as well. So you'll see, obviously, in our diagram here, we have our filters, transformers, and destinations. Our filters over here, we're starting off with just two of them. So a pipeline is defined as a YAML document, which we're going to see here in a moment. And it starts off with saying what data should be routed to this pipeline. So you can have multiple types of filters, and you can route data to multiple pipelines. You can have a single message sent to multiple destinations. But right now, we route data based on the path and the content type. So the path is basically saying, hey, I want all paths, or I want a specific one. What this allows you to do is essentially define new APIs for your devices to target. So if you're sending temperature data and you want that routed to one location, or maybe you're sending some data that should be routed to the end user of the product and some data that should be routed to internal systems for the product company, you now can have that filtered out and send those and transform them in different ways. The other thing that we filter on that I've kind of alluded to already is content type. The firmware SDK allows sending CBOR, JSON, and octet stream, but really any content type can be used here. You can also say, I'll take all content type, which may be applicable if you're not actually providing specific transformations. And that leads pretty well into transformers. I'm going to pop back up here to secrets in just a moment. Transformers are the way that we transform data that arrives at the Goliath platform into a format that can be consumed by another destination. And here you can kind of see the steps and what a pipeline looks like, and we'll look at this more concretely in a moment. But in this example, we're receiving some CBOR data, translating it to JSON, injecting some metadata, and sending it to GCP PubSub, and then also sending to LightDB Stream. So these two transformers are getting it in the right format for each of the respective destinations. So if a transformer is combined in the same step with a destination, that data is only transformed for that destination. So going sequentially here, we go from CBOR to JSON, and that's passed along. And then for step one, we inject metadata, but that's only passed along to GCP PubSub, whereas the JSON is passed along to subsequent steps, in this case, LightDB Stream. And so the thing that really powers all this, right, is the destinations, though. And we're coming in with support for all of the previous output stream locations that we had, and we'll be quickly adding more destinations. Obviously, this is a lot of functionality that we're giving to our customers, but one of the things this has also allowed us to do is have a more flexible internal architecture. So our users can expect that we're going to be delivering things a lot faster now, which is going to have some really exciting coming announcements in the next couple of weeks. But you can see all of the examples for destinations we have here. All external destinations, so those that are not hosted by Goliath, are going to require some sort of authentication to be able to talk to them. Let's stick with GCP PubSub here. This is an example of what a GCP service account key could look like, and you'll need to use that when configuring your GCP destination. However, you don't want to put that in plain text in your pipeline configuration. Pipelines are something that's intended to be able to be shared, and shown off and passed around and that sort of thing. So you certainly don't want your secrets in there, because it's not only insecure but also reduces portability. So here we're introducing the concept of secrets. And so for any parameters for a destination, you can reference a secret. And secrets are kind of similar to what you'd see on other platforms that offer secrets, basically just key value pairs that you can create in the Goliath console and then reference throughout your pipelines. And there's some new security features around this, which is really great. We're using project level encryption to make sure that any credentials that you give us to external destinations, they are encrypted by a key that's specific to your project. So we have some really strong isolation there. If you're looking at jumping into pipelines, which we're just about to do, we have some examples that you can go through, and they're going to show a lot of different ways that you can configure pipelines and some specific use cases, and then also some information on troubleshooting here. But Chris, you said we want to show off some pipelines. So let's actually get into the console and show what they're about.
Yeah. Yeah, and people should also, as Dan's pulling this up, people should expect that this is a new feature, but a fast changing feature too. So Docs is going to look different than probably what we're seeing here. We might see new destinations introduced. So check out the docs, like Dan was showing, to see the latest. That's always the best place to go. That is our best reference point for this sort of thing, and then you'll be able to dive in just like we are here.
Absolutely. So I have two pipelines configured here in my project. We're going to be looking at simple LightDB stream, which is the one that's enabled. You can disable a pipeline at any point in time to basically stop considering it for data that comes in. When you send streaming data to the Golioth platform, it is evaluated against all enabled pipelines. So those filters that we talked about at the beginning, they are going to be the criteria that determines whether data is sent to that pipeline. And like I said before, data can be sent to multiple pipelines. You can also have a single pipeline send data to multiple locations. So this very simple LightDB stream example here, I'm actually going to go ahead and take out the transformer, and let's start with something even simpler than we had before. So we're going to filter on any path for JSON data, and we have a single step. LightDB stream accepts JSON data, so that is perfect. We're sending the data. We're just going to send it right over to LightDB stream. So I'm going to go ahead and save this. It's already enabled, and we have this ready to go. I'll hop over to devices. We're going to leverage the Golioth simulator, which is always down here for a device in the bottom corner.
Did you know, gentle listener, viewer, that we have a simulator? You could do this yourself. Yeah, it is on this page and one other. Is it also on the pipeline page? I remember
it is also on the pipelines page.
Yeah, right.
And we're going to have right now. It's, as I said before, it sends JSON data. We're going to have some enhancements rolling out pretty soon here to allow you to send other types of data, potentially even upload files with binary data to be able to experiment with it. That's really important when creating pipelines to be able to validate that you have everything configured correctly. So here, I'm going to grab my credentials for this device, and we'll stick them into pipelines. So I'm going to stick this in, and that all looks good. We'll hop over to LightDB stream, and I should be able to send this JSON data right through to LightDB stream because we have that one pipeline enabled. We'll do that, refresh. Looks like we have our data. Well, we have this timestamp here, which is helpful. I might also want to put a timestamp in the payload if I want the timestamp to be able to be set by the device rather than when the timestamp arrives at Golioth. So I'm going to use this timestamp key, and let's grab a timestamp on another page here, and I'll pull this over.
This is something that we do often on our GPS, like asset tracker-based demos, because we're often capturing a GPS location, caching it locally on the device, and then sending a bulk amount of them. So we have to have the timestamp associated. And so now we can push it through like this and do other interesting things with it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I'm going to send this, goes through. If we refresh, we see it. We're still getting a timestamp there, and the timestamp is in the body. Well, what we really want here is for the timestamp to be the value here. Folks that have previously interacted with LightDB Stream are already aware of this functionality, but what we're showing here is that it's not on unless if you want it to at this point, and you can combine it with other systems. So I'm actually going to jump back over to that pipeline, and I'm going to add a transformer here. It's going to prompt me for the type, and I'm going to say extract timestamp, which is one of the ones that's mentioned in our documentation. Like I said, we have quite a few that are supported at launch, and we're going to have a bunch more coming soon. And so we'll go ahead and save this. Looks like it's all good there. And I'll hop back over, get my credentials again.
While you're doing that, the other thing that we should call out is that there is error checking in the light. And Dan said it's all good here, but all of the errors are actually being checked live as you're doing it. So you're not able to. It'll tell you if there's any errors in your pipeline as well, and there's also suggestions and things like that. So another thing that's actually going to make it easier for you to implement these things. Obviously, the docs will help you to understand which ones are available there, but then there's also contextual help to understand where that where your pipeline has some formatting issues and might need to be changed a little bit.
Absolutely. And so this timestamp is a little old. You'll see we have 154 here on the previous one. So I'm going to send this through. And what we should see is that The data comes through, but it's actually a little bit older, 137 here, and the
Mm,
timestamp has been removed. So we're basically able to specify that and alter our pipeline to be able to add new things. Now, as we roll out new transformers, you can introduce those as well into your pipelines. And like I said, some folks don't want to send data to LightDB Stream. They may just want it to go elsewhere. Maybe it can only be persisted on their system. You can certainly go in and add additional destinations, or send some data to some destinations and some to others. But this is just a small snippet of the functionality that's available to us.
I do see above in the banner that output streams are about to get an upgrade. Perhaps this is the upgrade that we've been waiting for.
This might just be it. And
Yeah, yeah.
for folks who are currently using output streams, I think that's a good call out. We are going to continue to support that use of output streams for projects that are already configured to do so, while offering migration as well.
Mhm.
So like I said, we previously kind of had some of these things like extracting the timestamp, things like batch data support. Those were all kind of built in, or you might even say forced upon a user when they're using this service. We've basically broken those out into smaller components, so we can replicate all behavior that has previously been configured with output streams with pipelines, which allows us to do a very seamless migration, and also for folks to be able to go in there and make slight modifications to the behavior without having to completely start fresh from where they are.
How do we help people dream up what they might be able to do with this stuff now, Dan? I have a couple in my head. Maybe you have a couple in your head.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think one of the ones that I think is really interesting is our webhook destination, which essentially allows you to post the data to whatever endpoint you want. So that's a really flexible example. With transformers, they're mostly fairly basic at launch right now. So extract, timestamp, convert from one format to the other, that sort of thing. But we have some big ideas about the type of conversions you can do, such as adding, removing fields, completely rewriting fields, being able to access additional context that the
Mm,
platform has about whatever message is coming through that may not be contained in the message,
yeah.
and being able to even do things like alerting based on the content that's flowing through pipelines. So the sky is kind of the limit here. I mentioned earlier that this is not just a big increase in functionality for our users, but internally, an entirely new paradigm that we can build on top of. And so, if you have an idea for how you would like to use pipelines, our goal is for you not to have to do post processing between Goliath and the external data destination where you want to persist the data. We want to bring that into Goliath, make it really seamless so that you can point at, a destination you want today and a destination you want tomorrow and potentially move between them without having to, put some Lambda function or something like that between the two platforms.
Yeah, that's great. And I think about, again, as a hardware engineer, I think about the past history with like having a cloud team asking me for something in a very specific format and pushing that device logic, having to put that onto device logic and like really loading down a lot of this difficulty stuff, the difficulty down on that device. And of course we enable that with OTA, but it's not necessarily a valuable thing for the device to have, and then having to push those updates every time a cloud team asks for iteration. Now that iteration can be done in this middle piece that is super flexible, super awesome. You can really turn things on and off and try out a lot of stuff as well. One
Right.
thing that I've been thinking about a lot with this is often when I'm using our samples or just our other stuff around streaming data, is I'm often like publishing this huge JSON packet and then just sending it to like .s/sensor as just a generic one, but really starting to think about breaking out different services, or having just battery, or having just the Wi-Fi connectivity endpoint, or just a sensor endpoint, that sort of thing, and then having all of these streams of data. They're all coming through the same front door, but then being able to truly data route to different locations, different services, different needs, that sort of thing.
Absolutely. And, I think one of the ways that we've started to kind of frame the concept that I think you're describing there is creating a contract between your firmware and your
Mm,
cloud platform.
yeah.
And I think these APIs really allow you to do that. I like to think of what you're talking about as like the device telling the cloud, these are my capabilities. I
Yeah.
send to these endpoints. These are the types of data that I'm offering up, and you do what you want with them, and route it where it needs to go. And like we said earlier, maybe that changes over time. But I think there's a lot of power in that concept, and I think that's something we're going to continue to evolve. And to that end, right now we're filtering based on path. Sometimes path might not be the best way to specify the type of data. Maybe on the cloud side, you want to introspect the data and route based on it.
Mhm.
So not just in the transformer and destination space, but also in the filtering space. That's a place that we want to continue to explore with customers and offer more functionality there.
Dan, where can people see you adding new functionality every week and perhaps on Fridays?
Well, we have a Friday afternoon stream, which has been on hiatus for, I think, 2 Fridays now. Mostly that's on me, but
Because Dan's
we
been
have
doing a
got
lot of
been
this.
right, right. We've been gearing up to launch this. We've been having a lot of fun kind of getting to the end and doing this final push here. Everyone kind of chipping in and us building a lot of internal pipelines to kind of demonstrate this to make sure that when we launch, we're able to make a video like this, but also put out documentation that illustrates the capabilities of this platform because we certainly have high aspirations for it. So if you show up on the Friday afternoon stream, I will make a promise right now that every Friday afternoon stream for the next 3 months,
Whoa.
I will come with a new pipeline configuration. So we may not spend the whole time talking about it, but I'll at least have it there, and we'll send some data through it and maybe get some feedback, and hopefully some of those will be coupled with some blog post announcements and things like
The
that.
live audience will be rewarded with
Right.
engineering wonders from Dan's fingertips to your eyeballs.
Absolutely. That might have been a promise that is going to include recruiting some other folks to
Yeah, right.
contribute to that
Yeah, that's
effort.
right. Yeah, yeah. That's great. That's great. It's exciting time. I'm really excited about this. Nice job, Dan, and the whole Goliath engineering team. I'm just on the peripheral. I'm just a user, so I get all the benefits.
No, I truly mean it when everyone's been pitching in, and I think the nice thing about this is it's giving capabilities to our users, right? So
Yeah, yeah, totally.
you're always a user zero, right, in our organization, the first one to be exposed to things. And what I'm really excited about is we've had the opportunity already to offer maybe more tooling to folks like yourself, and now our customers are going to have that as well. And I think the biggest thing that we can do here to continue to enhance the capabilities is get as much feedback as possible. I'm sure there's lots of use cases that folks have out there that we can continue to improve upon. We have the forum if you'd like to post example pipelines that you've created that you want to share with the community. If you have a request for a specific type of transformer or an idea about how you'd like things to work, please feel free to post there. Or you can also, of course, always reach out on any of the contact information on our website.
All right. Thanks, Dan. We'll see you in the next one.
Absolutely. Thanks, Chris. Have a good one.